Nobody in that courtroom was ready for what happened next. The moment Karen hurled her cat, yes, her cat, across the plaintiff's table in a burst of rage, the audience gasped, the bailiff froze, and even the cameras hesitated. But Judge Judy didn't. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just stared at Karen with the kind of silence that makes grown men rethink their entire lives. And within 30 seconds, that silence turned Karen from a screaming storm into a shaking, tear-soaked mess begging for mercy. But the story of why she did it and what Judy said next would leave everyone questioning who the real victim was. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Karen Mitchell, 43 years old, thought she had it all figured out. She came into that courtroom with her expensive shoes, perfect curls, and a sense of entitlement so thick you could bottle it. She wasn't there for justice. She was there for performance. Her claim? That her former neighbor owed her money for emotional damage caused by a cat scratching her luxury handbag. But there was one small problem. The cat wasn't the neighbor's. It was hers. Judge Judy had seen hundreds of liars walk into her courtroom, but this one felt different. Karen didn't just want to win. She wanted to humiliate. Every time Judy tried to clarify the facts, Karen interrupted, rolling her eyes, twisting the truth, and using her favorite line, "I pay your salary." The audience chuckled nervously, waiting for Judy's famous comeback. But this time the judge stayed unusually quiet, too quiet. She leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and let Karen keep talking herself deeper and deeper into the hole. And then, the breaking point. Judy asked one simple question that cracked the whole story open. "Ms. Mitchell, if the cat belongs to you, why does the veterinary bill have your name on it?" The color drained from Karen's face. She fumbled her papers, stumbled over her words, and tried to laugh it off. But the cameras caught everything, the guilt, the arrogance turning into panic. Desperate to regain control, she lashed out, scooping up her own cat from its carrier and throwing it toward the bench as if to prove something. The cat screeched, the courtroom erupted, and Judy's gavel struck once, sharp, final. That's when it happened. The transformation no one saw coming. Judy didn't yell. She didn't need to. She simply stood, fixed her eyes on Karen, and said 9 words that echoed through the studio like a verdict from heaven. "You just proved everything I needed to know." Karen froze. The courtroom fell silent. And in that moment, every ounce of false confidence melted into fear. Her voice broke, her hands trembled, and for the first time all day she looked small. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They were witnessing the fall of someone who thought she could outsmart justice. If you're still watching, comment "Justice served" below, because what happens next will show exactly how Judge Judy turns arrogance into accountability. The bailiff was still frozen mid-step, his hand hovering near the bench like he wasn't sure whether to comfort the cat or arrest its owner. The animal, thankfully unharmed, darted into the corner of the courtroom, its frightened eyes reflecting the chaos Karen had created. But amid the gasps, whispers, and murmurs rippling through the audience, one sound rose above all, the sharp, deliberate scrape of Judge Judy's chair sliding back. That sound alone silenced the room. Judy didn't raise her voice, but everyone knew what was coming. Karen's breathing quickened as Judy stood up, adjusted her robe, and stared her down, not with anger, but with something far worse, disappointment. "Ms. Mitchell," Judy began, her tone calm, almost surgical, "you've just turned a civil case into a moral one. Do you understand what you've done here?" Karen's lips trembled. I didn't mean—" Judy cut her off with a single raised hand. "Don't lie again. Not after what I just saw." The courtroom was so quiet that you could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights above. Even the cat's nervous breathing could be heard faintly from the corner. Judy's eyes didn't leave Karen's face once. Not when she tried to explain, not when she muttered excuses, and not when she reached for her purse like she wanted to disappear. It was as if Judy was holding up a mirror, forcing her to see what everyone else was seeing. An entitled woman unraveling under the weight of her own arrogance. "Let me tell you something," Judy said finally. Her voice low but carrying through the room like a verdict. "You don't disrespect this courtroom. You don't disrespect me. But most of all, you don't harm an innocent animal because you can't handle the truth." The crowd's silence broke into a quiet murmur of approval. One older woman in the audience shook her head, muttering, "That poor cat." Another whispered, "She's done for." Karen's eyes darted nervously from the judge to the audience, realizing the tide had turned. Her carefully crafted image, the confident homeowner, the victim of injustice, had crumbled into dust. Her makeup looked smudged now, her hair disheveled from all her dramatics. The same people who'd gasped at her confidence were now looking at her with contempt. "Do you know what that animal felt when you threw it?" Judy asked. "Fear," confusion, pain. And that, Ms. Mitchell, is exactly what you've been trying to make everyone else feel here today. Karen swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't like that. Judy tilted her head. Then tell me what it was like. Go ahead, tell me how tossing a living creature proved your point. Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out. The tears that she had fought so hard to hold back finally began to spill. She pressed her palms against her face, but it was too late. Her mascara streaked down like dark ink, truth written in humiliation. Judy walked back to her chair, slow and measured. When you walked into my courtroom, you thought you could perform your way into victory, she said, settling into her seat. But what you don't understand, Ms. Mitchell, is that justice doesn't bend for theatrics. It bends for truth. The camera panned to Karen's trembling hands. Her breathing came in short, shaky bursts. It was the first time she wasn't trying to talk over someone else. The silence forced her to sit with her own reflection, the kind of silence Judge Judy used like a weapon sharper than any word. Here's what's going to happen, Judy said. You're going to apologize to the plaintiff, to this courtroom, and to that animal. You will also pay the veterinary bill since it's your cat and your negligence that caused harm. Karen blinked rapidly. But Your Honor, no, Judy snapped, her voice now steel. You've said enough. The gavel hit once, sharp as a heartbeat. Do it. Karen turned toward the plaintiff, her former neighbor, a quiet woman who had sat through the chaos in stunned silence. Karen's voice cracked. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to. The woman didn't reply. She simply nodded, eyes glistening, not out of pity but out of disbelief that it had come to this. Judy leaned forward. Now, Ms. Mitchell, look at me. Karen hesitated, then met Judy's eyes. What you did today, Judy said softly, wasn't about money or handbags. It was about control. But you just learned the hardest lesson in this courtroom. Control doesn't come from shouting. It comes from accountability. The audience murmured again, this time in agreement. Judy's tone softened slightly. And for what it's worth, she added, glancing toward the frightened cat now being comforted by the bailiff, I hope you understand that mercy starts with humility. Karen nodded through tears, whispering, Yes, Your Honor. Judy tapped her gavel again, the final note in a symphony of consequence. Then let's begin your redemption right here. The words hung in the air, stern but strangely redemptive. The audience applauded softly, a rare moment in Judy's courtroom where justice felt both harsh and healing as the credits of the moment began to form. The camera still on Karen's tear-streaked face. Judy's closing expression said it all, calm, collected, and entirely unshaken. She had turned chaos into clarity and arrogance into remorse. If you believe Judy handled that perfectly, comment no one judges like Judy. Below, because the next part reveals how she taught Karen a life-changing lesson about what real mercy looks like. When the courtroom emptied that afternoon, the echo of Judge Judy's words still hung in the air. Karen sat alone at the plaintiff's table, staring at the scuffed wood where her cat's carrier had been. Her mascara was ruined, her pride shattered, and for the first time in years she had nothing clever left to say. The cameras had stopped rolling, but the weight of that silence, of her own actions, stayed heavy in the room. Judge Judy gathered her notes, calm as ever. But before stepping away from the bench, she paused. The bailiff looked at her confused. Judy didn't usually linger after a verdict, but something in Karen's defeated posture made her hesitate, not out of sympathy but out of principle. Ms. Mitchell, she said, her voice echoing through the now quiet courtroom. You may have embarrassed yourself on national television, but that's not the real punishment. The real punishment is realizing that every person in this room saw who you really are, and more importantly, so did you. Karen lifted her eyes slowly, her voice trembling. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, Judy nodded once. You were trying to win at any cost. But sometimes the cost is your dignity. And when that's gone, you've got nothing left to protect. The words hit like a gavel. They weren't angry. They were surgical, precise, the kind that doesn't just punish but teaches. Karen lowered her gaze, unable to respond. Her entire case, her attitude, her performance, it had all been built on pretending to be the victim. But in the end, she'd exposed herself as the aggressor. That realization burned hotter than any public humiliation. Judy stepped down from the bench, her robe swaying slightly as she walked past the tables. You know, she said quietly, I've been doing this a long time. I've met people who've lost everything, money, homes, family, but the ones who recover are the ones who admit when they're wrong. Karen's throat tightened. And what if it's too late? Judy stopped beside her, looking down with that mix of authority and wisdom that made millions tune in every day. It's never too late to tell the truth, she said, but it's always too late to pretend you didn't need to. The bailiff opened the door, letting the hallway lights spill into the courtroom. Karen stood up slowly, wiping her face with trembling hands. She picked up her empty carrier, the faint sound of her cat meowing from down the hall as the crew returned it to her. For once, she didn't storm off. She just walked quietly out the door. No arrogance, no performance. Just a woman who finally understood that winning wasn't worth losing herself. Judge Judy turned back toward the bench, her voice low but resolute. "That," she murmured to the bailiff, "is what justice looks like." And in that quiet courtroom, long after the cameras stopped, justice felt less like punishment, and more like truth finally finding its voice. The next morning, the entire country was talking about it. Clips of the trial flooded social media. 10-second videos of Karen's meltdown, slowed down and replayed with captions like, "Never mess with Judge Judy" and "Instant karma" on live TV. Even news outlets ran short segments about it, calling it the most shocking courtroom moment of the year. But inside Judge Judy's chambers there was no celebration. Judy sat at her desk reading a stack of letters that had arrived overnight. Some praised her, others condemned her for being too harsh, but she didn't care for either. Justice to her was never about applause. It was about truth. Still, she couldn't deny it. Something about that woman, that case, had stayed in her mind longer than most. Meanwhile, across town, Karen Mitchell sat in her car outside a pet clinic. Her cat, Bella, was inside getting checked for stress and bruising. The same cat she had thrown in anger. The same one that had stared at her with frightened eyes when she realized what she'd done. She hadn't slept all night. Every headline, every meme, every notification reminded her of the same truth Judge Judy had said out loud. She'd become her own punishment. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her sister read, "Karen, you need to apologize publicly. It's everywhere." Karen threw the phone aside and buried her face in her hands. She had built her entire identity on being right. Now the world only saw her as a woman who lost her temper and her humanity in front of millions. Back in the courtroom building, Judy walked through the hallways, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her bailiff, Bird, caught up to her. "Ma'am, you saw the morning coverage?" "I did," she replied without breaking stride. He smirked. "You broke the internet again." Judy shot him a look, the kind that ended conversations before they began. If people need entertainment, they can watch sitcoms. This courtroom is for consequences. Still, there was something in her eyes, a faint glimmer of concern. She paused near the exit, looking out at the reporters waiting near the gates. "She'll be all right," Bird said softly. "Maybe," Judy answered. "But only if she learns from it. Shame fades, character doesn't." At the clinic, Karen waited in silence until the vet emerged holding Bella's carrier. "She's fine physically," he said gently, "but she's frightened. Take it slow. Talk to her softly. She needs to trust you again." Karen nodded, tears threatening to spill again. "She doesn't trust me anymore, does she?" The vet hesitated, then answered honestly, "Not yet." That word, "yet," echoed in her mind. Maybe that's what Judy meant. Maybe this wasn't the end. Hours later, Karen returned home and sat on her couch, Bella's carrier beside her. The cat hesitated before stepping out, sniffing the air cautiously. Karen whispered, "I'm sorry." The cat didn't respond, just turned away and curled up on the rug. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Meanwhile, in a production meeting later that afternoon, Judy's producers discussed the ratings spike. "That episode's trending everywhere," one said, grinning. "We should replay it next week." Judy interrupted. "No, not that one." The room fell silent. "Why not?" asked the producer. "Because that wasn't a show," she said flatly. It was a mirror. Her words hung heavy in the room. Everyone understood. She didn't want to celebrate humiliation. She wanted people to remember the message. Later that evening, Judy was walking to her car when she saw a small envelope tucked under her windshield wiper. It was handwritten, no return address. She opened it and read, "Judge Judy, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know you were right. I needed to see myself the way the world did. I'm starting over. Karen Mitchell." Judy folded the note and slipped it into her purse. Her expression didn't change, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. She looked up at the fading sunset and muttered, "Maybe she learned something after all." The next day, during a new case, Judy glanced briefly toward the empty plaintiff's table where Karen once sat. She felt that same quiet pride she rarely admitted, the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the gavel doesn't just deliver punishment. It delivers a chance for people to rebuild themselves. Karen's story would soon fade from the headlines, but in that courtroom, something permanent remained. Judy's silence that day, the pause between justice and compassion, had turned a viral moment into a moral one. And while Karen might never erase what happened, she'd carry the lesson for life. That the cruelest thing a person can lose isn't a case or a reputation. It's respect, both from others and from themselves. And that was exactly what Judy had given her the chance to earn back. A week passed. The storm of headlines had slowed, but the ripples of Karen's outburst still moved quietly across the internet. Strangers debated her character, psychologists analyzed her behavior, and clips of Judge Judy's icy stare had been turned into viral reaction memes. Yet, away from the noise, something unexpected was happening. Karen was changing. For the first time in years, her mornings were quiet. No constant phone calls, no dramatic social media posts, no desperate attempts to prove herself right. She had deleted every account that fed her ego. Instead, she spent her days volunteering at the same animal clinic where she'd brought Bella after the incident. The staff didn't know who she was, at least not at first, and she preferred it that way. She just showed up, swept the floors, and cleaned kennels. It wasn't glamorous, but it was grounding. One afternoon, as she refilled food bowls, an older volunteer smiled at her. "You handle the cats real gently," the woman said. "Most people rush through it. You take your time." Karen smiled faintly, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "I used to rush everything," she admitted quietly. "Didn't realize what I was breaking in the process." The woman didn't press. She just nodded with the quiet wisdom of someone who'd seen a lot of broken things get fixed over time. And as Karen stroked Bella, now calmer and more trusting, she realized something simple but profound. The same patience she'd denied others was what she now needed most for herself. Meanwhile, in her office miles away, Judge Judy sat reviewing cases when her assistant entered. "You might want to see this," he said, handing her a printed news article. The headline read, "Former viral defendant volunteers at local shelter. Judge Judy was right." Judy read the short piece. It wasn't dramatic, no quotes, no interviews, just a photo of Karen kneeling beside a group of rescued cats, her face softer, her posture humbled. Judy didn't smile, but her eyes softened slightly. "People can surprise you," she murmured, setting the paper aside. Later that evening, Judy filmed her closing statement for an upcoming episode. But instead of her usual fiery monologue, her tone shifted, measured, reflective. "Some people think justice is about punishment," she said, looking straight into the camera. "But real justice is about awakening. It's about realizing who you are when no one's watching, and deciding if that's who you still want to be." Her words echoed beyond that courtroom. Karen heard them too, playing on her small kitchen TV as she washed dishes that night. She paused, listening, and whispered under her breath, "Thank you, Judge." And somewhere deep down she knew, this time she wasn't trying to win anyone over. She was just trying to be someone she could finally respect again. Months later, Judge Judy walked through a quiet Los Angeles park where a charity event for rescued animals was being held. Rows of cages lined the paths, filled with cats waiting for new homes. She'd been invited as a guest speaker, not because of her fame, but because her message from that viral case had sparked something bigger, a national conversation about accountability and compassion. As she approached the podium, she noticed a familiar face among the volunteers, Karen Mitchell. She was wearing a plain white shirt with the shelter's logo. No makeup, no performance, just her. Judy's steps slowed, but her expression remained unreadable. When Karen looked up and met her gaze, she froze for a moment, then smiled. Not nervously, not desperately, but with quiet sincerity. After the event, Karen approached her cautiously. "Judge Judy," she said softly, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Judy folded her arms. "I don't usually make house calls," she said dryly. Karen chuckled, just a breath of laughter. "I deserved what happened that day, but I also needed it. You gave me something I didn't know I'd lost, in perspective." Judy studied her for a long second, her sharp eyes searching for any hint of the old arrogance. But it wasn't there anymore. Karen's voice carried humility, not defense. "I started working here after the case," she continued. "At first I thought it was penance. Now it feels like purpose." For once, Judy's tone softened. "That's how you know you've learned something. The lesson sticks when no one's forcing you to repeat it." Karen nodded, her eyes misty but calm. "I still think about what you said, that control doesn't come from shouting, it comes from accountability." "You were right," Judy gave a small nod. "You don't need me to say it, but I will anyway. I'm proud of you." The words caught Karen off guard. She blinked, smiling through her tears. "Thank you, Your Honor." Judy turned to leave, her robe flowing behind her as she headed toward the parking lot. But just before stepping away, she looked back. "Ms. Mitchell," she called out, "keep doing things right. Not for me, not for anyone watching, but because now you know how it feels when you finally do." And in that simple exchange, both women understood. Justice wasn't just served that day. It had endured. Weeks after the charity event, Judge Judy filmed her final episode of the season. The courtroom was quiet. No loud plaintiffs, no smirking defendants, no chaos. Just Judy, her gavel, and a small audience that didn't know they were about to witness something different. As the cameras rolled, Judy leaned forward, her voice softer than usual. "You know," she began, "people often ask me what justice really means. They think it's about winning a case, proving someone wrong, or walking away feeling superior. But it's not. Real justice," she paused, tapping the bench lightly, "is about what happens after the verdict. It's about whether a person walks out of this courtroom better than when they came in." Her crew exchanged glances. This wasn't scripted. But Judy wasn't talking to them. She was talking to the millions of people who had seen Karen's case and felt something deeper than entertainment. That day, she continued, a woman made a terrible mistake. The world laughed at her. But what mattered most was that she didn't stay that person. She learned, she grew. That's what justice looks like when it works. Meanwhile, in a quiet shelter across town, Karen was cleaning out the cat enclosures. Bella followed her around like a small shadow now. Trust restored, bond rebuilt. The other volunteers called her the Cat Whisperer, never realizing how poetic that nickname truly was. As Karen finished her shift, she sat outside under the fading orange sky, scrolling through her phone. A clip from Judy's new episode appeared on her feed, the very speech airing live. She listened, every word wrapping around her heart like closure she hadn't known she needed. When Judy said, "Real justice is when a mistake becomes a lesson instead of a label," Karen felt tears roll down her cheeks. For the first time, she didn't cry out of shame, but gratitude. She whispered to Bella, "I think she was talking about us." The cat purred softly, resting in her lap. Across the city, as Judy removed her microphone and set down her notes, Bird walked over. "That was one for the books," he said quietly. Judy gave a faint smile. "No," she said, glancing at the empty witness stand. "That one was for her." The lights dimmed, the set emptied, and for a moment, the courtroom that once witnessed chaos now carried only peace. If you watched this till the end, comment, "Justice lives on." Because true justice isn't just a verdict in court. It's the moment someone finds the courage to change.